We are moving right along in this NBA offseason, and I know I've been talking about it for a couple weeks now. Ranking season is right around the corner, but first, we got to finish what we started last week. Before we get started on that, though, first, give us a follow on all our socials. I got them listed right here. YouTube, like and subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell so you get notifications when we're uploading on here. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram as well. Every follow goes a long way. I've appreciated the support so far along this journey. I know we still got a long way to go, and every follow counts. Today, we are asking the biggest question for every Eastern Conference team in the NBA. We started with the West last week, and now we're going to probably the lesser exciting of the two. A lot of injuries out East, but we're going to break it all down, asking the biggest question heading into next season. A lot of these teams, the question may go outside of just next season. I think you know probably who I'm talking about some of these teams that are already looking at not next year, but the year after. We're going to be breaking it all down right here on Game 7, the best two words in sports. Let's get it.
Flat out, get it done.
All right, we're going to do things the same way that we did last week, moving through division by division. No particular order here, just kind of going through depending on whatever Google image I use for showing me where the divisions are. Divisions don't really mean a whole lot in NBA basketball, but helping me break these videos up, we're going to go division by division, talking 5 teams at a time here, and we are getting started with the 2 years ago champion in the Boston Celtics. And this is a team that probably could have a lot of questions, right? They just shook up their roster a lot more than we've seen them do over the last couple years. Obviously, they just went on the championship run. Last year, they bowed out early to the Knicks because of the Tatum injury. Well, it looked like the Knicks were going to win anyway, but late in game 6, I think it was, when Tatum went down, Knicks were up 10. But still, a lot is shaken up for Boston right now. Drew Holiday is not here anymore. Al Horford probably going to the Warriors from all accounts that I've seen. Not sure what the holdup there is necessarily, but you can kind of get into the weeds on the salary cap stuff, and I'm not going to do that here, but it looks like he's going to be going to Golden State. And then Kristaps Porzingis, also gone. And I want to highlight especially those last two. It's Kristaps and it's Horford. Those were really your only 2 big guys. As far as Kristaps would usually start at the 5, and I mean outside of Sam Hauser, who is also out to San Antonio now. Right now, just going through their roster, because it was tough for me to think off the top of my head who would have been there as far as a point guard or a power forward and a center for this team. And that's my question: who is the big man for this team? They just brought in Anthony Simons. You have Jaylen Brown. You have Derek White. You have Peyton Pritchard. Those are all guards. Obviously, Tatum is out this year. Probably no Horford. No Kristaps anymore. Sam Hauser is gone. Not that I would have felt super confident with him being a starting caliber guy anyway. But who's your big guy? Right now, Boston has Luka Garza and Xavier Tillman on the roster. I think they have 2 other guys that are in their first or second year in the league. As far as rotation guys that I've actually seen any kind of tape on, Luka Garza and Xavier Tillman. It's been a while since we've seen Tillman get some actual run. You remember he was on that Memphis team that was playing against the Lakers in the first round just a few years ago, and he had a pretty good series. I think that's kind of when his name started to get out there a little more. Not much. We haven't seen much from him since then. And now he is 1 or 2 on your roster as far as power forwards and centers. Only 6'7", Xavier Tillman. So kind of a guy where I know Horford's a couple inches taller than him, but kind of a guy Tatum's taller than him. I don't know how comfortable you feel about putting him in a lineup against, especially you start talking some of the big teams. If you're really trying to contend, I don't think they are this year, but I'm not trusting Xavier Tillman to guard Joel Embiid if he's playing. And there's a couple other guys on that list too, obviously. What does this year even look like for the Celtics is really kind of the overarching theme. You're without Tatum, like I've said. that's kind of been the biggest thing that's been hanging up in the air is, how much are you going to drop? How much is this team going to drop? Are they trying to compete? It doesn't seem like that's the case. Obviously, you have a lot of pieces. You were just a champion just 2 years ago. You were a champion. Obviously, some of those pieces are still going to be around, and you're still going to be a decent team, especially in a very weak Eastern Conference. But I don't think they're actively making moves to try and better their chances to contend going into next year. I think it's, hey, let's keep a couple of these pieces for when Tatum is going to come back, and let's see what kind of assets we can move. Let's see if we can get this team a little younger. Obviously, Horford out and healthier. Kristaps not super reliable to get on the floor a lot of the times, especially in the playoffs over the last 2 years for them. Interested to see what they do here. My question for them is, who's the big man? They're not the only one with that question on this list. But first, we're going to switch it over to another team in that division, and that's the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets kind of in no man's land right now. Used all five of their picks to draft guards that can't shoot. Not really a recipe for a successful NBA player in today's era. You don't see a whole lot of guys that are small and sometimes can't defend, and that's not the case for all their draft picks, but when you're talking about an undersized guard, that usually is something that comes along with it, but also can't shoot. But I'm not even going to look at the draft because overall they're in no man's land. Just shipped out Cam Johnson, got Michael Porter Jr. back. I'm not really sure where he fits on this roster either. This is another team that doesn't really seem like they're trying to compete. It always seems like the Nets are trying to set up something to compete, right? Where, they're one move away, they're 2 moves away, they're a KD, Kyrie away from competing, and they just kind of hang around in that. It's almost like the Heat a little bit, and we'll talk about that later, but to a much lesser degree, the Brooklyn Nets are. My question for the Nets is, what is Cam Thomas's worth? Because right now, he's sitting in restricted free agency, and it doesn't seem like there's a single team out there that wants to touch him, especially for the price that he wants. Obviously, restricted free agency, you go out, you test the market, you see what teams are willing to pay you, and based on whatever that offer is, the Brooklyn Nets will have a chance to match it. Are they going to match something that is in the ballpark of what Cam Thomas is asking for? Absolutely not. Reports are saying that he wants $30 million. $30 million. That's like right around what a Desmond Bane makes. That's a little less than a Desmond Bane makes. I don't think he's on par, a similar caliber of player. I think Cam Thomas, if he's on a contending team, is a 6-man at best. I don't think he's a starting guy. I think he's too ball dominant and doesn't give you enough production, in my opinion. Obviously, the Nets, you can kind of do whatever you want. He's just shot-chucking over there. But to put him on a contending team, like the Celtics per se, or just a team of a similar caliber, I don't think you're winning a championship with Cam Thomas in your starting lineup. That's just how I feel, and he's asking $30 million. He's certainly not worth that, in my opinion. My question is, what can you pay him to bring him back and hopefully get him on a deal that can be somewhat attractive to some of these other teams? Like I just said, the Nets, always a team that's hanging around waiting for that one move. Cam Thomas is going to be one of those guys. Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. are going to be those guys. Nick Claxton as well, throw him in there, that are on par salary-wise with some of these other guys, or at least you can pair up to be on par salary-wise with a guy that you would want to make that big splash. I'm not sure who that player is, but you have to match salary. We know that in this league, especially with the way that this second apron has some GMs talking. I'm looking at you, Denver. Not really sure what his value is, and you're not going to have a team that is willing to take on a huge contract for Cam Thomas and give up a little bit. So making that match somebody that the Nets want, I think is probably the best call. Not to the tune of $30 million, though. I'm thinking maybe half that, maybe 20, right? That kind of seems to be almost like the mid-level kind of right now is a $20 million annual salary. That's kind of where I have Cam Thomas. I'm not super high on him, and it doesn't seem like a lot of GMs are either. I think if they were going to pay him, they would have already. He's been sitting out there for plenty of time. How many free agency signings have we seen? How many moves have we seen this offseason already? Teams have definitely at least talked, if they were interested at all, and have decided not to pursue Cam Thomas. And I wonder where that leaves him. Okay, let's talk about a team that we're going to keep it kind of short on because there's really only one question that you can ask them, and it's unfortunate because as far as getting into an analytical perspective, I don't think you can do that with this team based on the year they had last year. That's the Philadelphia 76ers. Just signed Paul George to a massive deal going into last year, right? The deal that the Clippers would not give him. You have Tyrese Maxey, who's coming into his own as an all-star. Joel Embiid, a guy that just needs to stay on the floor, and he's going to give you 30 points a night, maybe even more than that. And Jared McCain, another guy that just came in and looked really good and then got hurt again. See the theme here. Paul George, Joel Embiid, Jared McCain, all out. Not that Jared McCain is really high up there, but just a nice, flashy kind of microwave kind of player that you could throw in there and just get a little spark going when something's not clicking with these other three. My question for the Sixers is, can you stay healthy? If out of all the years for the 76ers to stay healthy, this is the year. If you look over the last 5 years, outside of 2019, when they were a Kawhi hits the rim 5 times buzzer beater away from making an Eastern Conference Finals, this is the year to be healthy. Am I super optimistic about it? They've given me no reason to be. Joel Embiid, I haven't seen a ton of positive reports throughout the year. I mean, I feel like we waited until July. I don't remember seeing anything until maybe late June, but I feel like it was July that we first saw the reports where he's starting to ramp up. He's starting to ramp up in July. We are 12 weeks away from the season. What does he look like this year? Last year, it was bad. It was bad. And I'm not talking about the play on the floor. Joel Embiid is a all-time talented center. And I say talented because the resume isn't really on par to match. Obviously, the MVP, he's averaging 30. But when you have doctors coming out and saying there's nothing wrong with his knee, it's just swollen. It's just the size of a softball. I don't know how he's walking on it, but there's nothing wrong with it. That tells me that there's probably something that stems from a while ago that is going to take a long time to fix. And when you're that height, that weight, that large of a human being just in general, recovering from that stuff is not very easy. Can they stay healthy? If they, out of all the years, this is the year to do it. Sixers fans, I'm looking at you. Let's keep your guys healthy this year. Move in to kind of a rival, I guess. They're in the same division here. Moving up north to New York. The New York Knicks are the next team we're talking about. And I don't have a ton to say here either because obviously they were just in the Eastern Conference Finals. And Cat looked really good. Jalen Brunson looked phenomenal. That dude is a stud. That dude is ascending to superstar level, it feels like. I mean, when you're 30 points in the playoffs, hitting game winners, crossing Asar Thompson, one of the most elite defenders in this league, in my opinion, to win playoff games in an offense that is not creative at all. It's Jalen Brunson, get the ball, go up, maybe get a screen. If not, you're just going to ISO. There's not a whole lot of movement. You don't see off-ball screens. You don't see Jalen Brunson, Miles McBride having the ball in his hand so Jalen Brunson can run off a screen and go baseline and curl up around to the wing and get an open look like you see something like Curry doing. And I'm not saying they're similar players, but especially when it's somebody of that size, take a little bit of that pressure off of them. It was not super creative offensively, but that's what we've expected from Tibbs. And that's why my question for the New York Knicks, is Mike Brown the difference? Mike Brown hasn't, just kind of going back and refreshing myself on some of the teams that he's coached for and been an assistant for. He is hard-nosed like Tibbs, not to the full extent that Tibbs is. But you're going to be practicing in the middle of the season, that's for sure. And I know that's something that doesn't happen for every NBA team. Some of these teams aren't practicing a ton. You get your quote unquote training camp, right? You get in here, you get loose, you get warm, and then it's game time. And we're playing 3, 4, 5 times a week sometimes, and we just got to run and gun. And any chance you get to get a break, you're going to take. That's not the case for Mike Brown. Maybe a little more than Tibbs was. It's almost like one notch down. I'm wondering if Mike Brown is the difference, though, because he hasn't really shown me to be a guy that in game, can start to make those adjustments on the fly, at a halftime, at a quarter, at a timeout. What kind of inbounds play do you have? You're under the rim versus out towards half court. You're coming off a free throw. Whatever it is. Can he make and we saw Tibbs start to do that a little bit last year, but it just was a little too slow and too little too late. And I'm wondering if Mike Brown goes back and looks at that and realizes, hey, I need to sharpen my game a little bit on this. Because as far as a floor raiser, absolutely, throw Mike Brown in that category. As far as a ceiling raiser, I need to see it. I know he's a guy that players seem to like. I know De'Aaron Fox did not want to see him go in Sacramento. I like that. I like that they didn't hire Rick Brunson. We'll see. Is Mike Brown the difference? This team was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. If you ask a Knicks fan what a successful season looks like next year, is it finals or bust? The way the East is looking? I couldn't argue. It'd be hard for me to argue against that. We'll see if Mike Brown is the difference. Wrapping up the Atlantic Division with a team that is, again, kind of in no man's land. Kind of seems to be the theme for some of these Eastern Conference teams. I know I even said in the intro, probably the lesser exciting of the two conferences. Not even probably. It is the lesser exciting of the two conferences. Western Conference, you can go 1 through 10 and just throw a dart for some of them and figure out, hey, this is where they're going to be seeding. I mean, you're talking about 4 through 10 separated by 2.5 games. The Eastern Conference, not that way. We're talking about the Toronto Raptors. And my question for the Toronto Raptors, you got Scotty Barnes, you got Brandon Ingram, Jakob Poeltl, I guess, is a center that you can throw in there, right? My question is, who is stepping up out of the former New York crew, right? RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. They got shipped over there for the OG Anunoby deal. Who is going to step up out of that crew? Because it hasn't happened yet. And I think this team was really banking on IQ to do something. And it hasn't really happened. You're talking about a guy in RJ who has made is making more than $25 million a year. RJ Barrett last year averaged 21, 6, and 5. I guess kind of on par. I mean, we just talked about it with Cam Thomas. That 20 to 25 mil is kind of the medium range level for guys out here. I guess that's kind of on par. Shooting splits, not super nice. Not super nice. You don't really have a guy on this team that you're trusting to make outside shots a whole lot, which is scary in today's day and age. Flipping it over to Emmanuel Quickley. He is making more than $30 million a year. That's a lot. That's a lot for a guy that's giving you 17 points, 3 boards, and 5 assists a game. That's not great production for a guy that's making $30 million a year. And we need one of them to step up if this team is going to make the play-in, going to sneak into the playoffs. Maybe. I doubt it. Don't think so. I think the ceiling of this team is a play-in team. But you're going to need one of these guys to give you a little more production than what they've been giving you these last 2 years. Getting rolling in our next division with a team that is the most exciting franchise I think I've ever talked about. They're one of the smartest people. They always make the right trades. They always get assets back in their trades. They never trade Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso straight up. That is the Chicago Bulls. And my question for the Bulls is, when will the streak of just terrible moves end? And do you move Kobe White? Not much can be said for this team. You're trading you're trading back 10 picks in the second round of the draft for cash considerations. Like I just mentioned, you traded Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso straight up. That deal's looking better and better by the day for them, but golly, when that thing first broke, that looked bad. The press on that was bad. Are they going to tear it down completely, though? Chicago, notorious for not doing that. They want to win 42 games. They want to put butts in seats. They want to do just enough to make it seem like they're going to win games and end up in that 500 range, maybe a little bit below that. If you are tearing it down, Kobe White has to go. You have to get draft capital back for Kobe White. I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think this streak ends anytime soon. That's my Chicago Bulls breakdown for you. Okay, let's move to a team that had a little bit more of an exciting season last year. Very much so, actually, in the Indiana Pacers. Halliburton, man. gosh, gonna miss him this year. And my question for Indiana is, can you find a center by the time Halliburton comes back? We're talking about Thomas Bryant possibly starting games for the Indiana Pacers. I didn't think I'd be saying that in 2025. I remember him getting run with the Wizards in like 2015, 16, 17. We're 8 years past that, and he did not look good in these playoffs. There were a lot of times where I was screaming at the TV, Rick Carlisle, take Thomas Bryant out. Take him out. Take him out. He can't guard. He can't shot block. He can't short roll. He can't finish dunks. And you're going to need a center. You're going to need a center because you just lost Miles Turner. And especially, as fast as this, do you really want Pascal Siakam getting tick at the 5? No. You don't. Miles Turner, a huge loss, especially the fact that it's only over $3 million a year. That's the report, at least, that I saw, is that was the difference between what the Bucks offered and what the Pacers offered. Their 10-year vet, $3 million difference a year. It was enough for Miles Turner to say, yep, I'm out of here. I'm going to go to a much worse situation in Milwaukee. I don't want to hang around with my buddies in Indiana. I'm done with that. Can you find a center by the time Halliburton comes back? I'm not sure who's even on the market, but can you imagine this team with a Nick Claxton down at the 5 now, with Halliburton back in the lineup a year and a half from now, 2 years from now? I think that is a team that's poised to head right back into it. Miles Turner didn't even play that great. Miles Turner, I saw this stat come out a few weeks after the finals came out that he is the 11th leading rebounder in the NBA Finals. Your starting center, what is he, 6'11", 6'10"? Your starting center is the 11th leading rebounder. 2 full starting fives. 2 full starting fives from each roster. You can take 5 people from the Thunder and the Pacers, and they all rebounded more than the starting center for the Indiana Pacers, Miles Turner. You don't need a ton to fill this role. You just need somebody not named Thomas Bryant. Somebody that can give you some net positive production through a playoff run. Thomas Bryant is not that guy. Miles Turner was, I guess. He can stretch the floor for you. I don't think you need that necessarily in the next guy you bring in. But I'll tell you what, I'm taking all the money out of my bank account, and I'm putting my money on the fact that the Pacers will not make a NBA Finals again if Thomas Bryant is a starting center. Let's go to a team that's more on the up and up here. Actually, I just skipped over. We'll head back there. We're going to go to the Pistons because the Pistons were sneakily, I know I said in the first episode that the Magic is my favorite team to keep my eye on in the Eastern Conference. Pistons are a close second. Asar Thompson is fun to watch. And Cade Cunningham is fun to watch. And he really took a step up in this playoffs. He really, if you are still doubting Cade Cunningham after watching his series against, a really good team, and that too, like the Knicks, that's a conference finals team. If you still have doubts about Cade Cunningham, I don't know what series you were watching because any doubts that I had, any doubts that I was seeing are gone. This guy is a bona fide stud. He's not a superstar yet. He's young. He's really young. He was on a team that lost 27 straight games last year, 2 years ago, to a team that was competing in the first round of the playoffs. That's tough to do. It's really tough to do. Especially when you're... what kind of situation has this guy been in? His first coach? Maybe his second coach? I would have to fact check. Either way, if you're a young player and you have Monty Williams, who didn't want to coach, said no to the job, and then just got offered an astronomical amount of money that I wouldn't be surprised if the Pistons are still paying him at this point as your head coach, how are you going to grow? How are you going to continue to learn and get better as a player and add to these stats? Especially when my question is, who is the second scorer on the Pistons? It's not Malik Beasley anymore. We'll kind of leave that one out of there. I know they just brought in Duncan Robinson. Cool, I guess. That's a shooter for you. Somebody to stretch the floor. back on the Monty Williams point, this guy would not play Jaden Ivey if his life depended on it. And I'm wondering if that's the guy that needs to step up. I'm thinking it's the guy that needs to step up. I want to see Jaden Ivey get real run this year. I want to see Jaden Ivey get a real chance on the floor to show that he can be the second fiddle for this Detroit Pistons team moving forward. I think it has to happen. I think that's the next step. I don't think this team can reach its ceiling without that happening. And I'm going to be keeping my eye on the Pistons. Second favorite team in the East. Second favorite team in the East to keep my eye on, the Detroit Pistons. If you would have told me that 2 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. All right. Milwaukee Bucks. Let's head up to good old Milwaukee. Let's check in on Giannis real quick. My question for the Bucks, after all the moves they made, Damian Lillard, back to Portland, by the way. I love that. I love that he's heading back to Portland. Highest paid assistant coach next year, and then he's going to get to finish his career the way that it probably should have always been. I love that. I know we didn't get a chance to talk about that or the Chris Paul move either. We'll probably touch on that next week. Right now, we're focusing on the Milwaukee Bucks, and my question for them, especially after the Dame loss, who are you trusting to handle the ball? You just spent the rest of your cap space on Miles Turner, who is not that kind of guy. You added Cole Anthony. I believe he's pretty close to a minimum. I don't think he was a mid-level exception. You're not spending a whole lot of money on Cole Anthony right now. But these are the guys going through the roster that I have any kind of trust with the ball. And I mean, that's a stretch, right? Any kind of trust. Like, okay, 2 possessions, maybe you can take the ball up. Cole Anthony obviously is one of those guys. They just added him this offseason. Gary Harris, also on this roster. Gary Harris, he's good to put up some shots. He's good to maybe make a pass or two. Just try not to turn the ball over. And then the next 2 guys, KPJ, Kevin Porter Jr., and Gary Trent Jr. Those seem to be the only guys. 4 guys. Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, KPJ, Gary Trent. Tell me if I'm missing somebody. I hope I am. Obviously Giannis, right? But you got to have somebody to set the table. You really do. You really do. And I just don't know. The Bucks are in such a tricky situation because how do you get better from where you're at right now? Obviously trades and stuff, but I mean, you just traded the guy that was the second fiddle on your championship team for Kyle Kuzma, who's probably going to be coming off the bench to start the year, and gave you a nothing burger in the playoffs consistently. Terrible. I don't like this group of guys that I just named as your only guys to handle the ball. I like this group of guys if you have a Dame Lillard fully healthy. But if you're telling me that Cole Anthony is your best ball handler, I'm not a huge fan of that team. All right, let's talk about the division that I'm probably most excited to talk about out of all these teams. They're pretty evenly spread out. I just realized we forgot the Cavs. Let's talk about the Cavs first, and then we'll get into this other division here. That is the team that I skipped over before going to the Pistons. And my question for the Cavs is, how many more times are we willing to run this crew back before we've said, that's enough? Right? We talked earlier this offseason about them wanting to shop Garland. They offered him up. They threw him in a potential KD package. Seems like they're somewhat willing to start to break this core up of Garland, Mitchell, Allen, Mobley. I mean, Garland or Allen are the 2 that you look at and are probably the most expendable. I think Garland's really good. I think he's one of the best point guards in this league. And I think he's one of the last of a breed of a pass first, but can also score, Steve Nash light kind of player is Darius Garland. You've had 2 runs at it, two good, solid, decent chances at going for a title, and both times you've ended up on the IR. How many more times are we willing to run this crew back before we say break it up? I don't know what those trade deals look like, but like I said about the Sixers, if this is the year to stay healthy, or if you're going to stay healthy out of any year, this is the year to do it. This is the year to stay healthy. It's wide open. You did your regular season stuff. Let's get guys healthy for the playoffs, especially Darius Garland, because that guy hasn't had a fair chance at putting really solid tape on national TV in front of a national stage in the playoffs. Let's get these guys healthy and see what they can actually do in the playoffs. All right. Quick backtrack there to get to the Cavs. Totally forgot about that. I just skipped over them. I got them all listed right here on my Google Doc and skipped over it. All right. Here we go. Moving on to the division that I introduced just a few minutes ago as the division I'm most excited to talk about. We're getting started with the team that I know you all clicked on this video for, the Charlotte Hornets. My question for the Charlotte Hornets is pretty easy, and I'm sure you guys are asking the same thing. I'm sure every single person that watches Hornets basketball or NBA basketball in general is asking, can LaMelo Ball stay healthy? Did the big baller brand shoes do too much irreversible damage to his ankles like we're seeing with Lonzo, where he's not going to be able to play a full season anymore? I really hope not, because this guy is a lot of fun to watch, was averaging 30 earlier on in the year, highest usage in the league, just putting up anything that he wanted to as far as shots go. But he's a guy that, he's up there when fully healthy as far as playmakers go in this league. He is very high up there. He has the vision. It's just a matter of will to want to pass it, to want to make that extra pass. He likes taking shots. Sometimes he'll take a tough shot and instead of passing to a guy that's maybe a little more wide open there, and a guy that he probably set up to be open just from the gravity of his shooting and his dribble ability and all these types of things, but he'll still take that shot. So, and it's hard to get a read on the roster as a whole without LaMelo Ball. This roster is set up to complement LaMelo. Brandon Miller hasn't really showed me to be a standout talent. I like Brandon Miller. I think he's a really solid player. I just don't think he's everything he was built up to be when the Hornets drafted him. And I don't think we can see what this team's full potential is without getting LaMelo healthy. And I'm done with the buying in. I bought in last year. I know I wasn't on tape, but I bought in last year. I thought they were going to be a play-in team last year. They just keep proving me wrong. I'm gonna stay low on the Hornets here, and we'll see. A team that I haven't stayed low on, and I may have spoken a little out of turn just a couple of videos ago because I said this team might have a chance of making the play-in, and sure, they might have a chance, but I might have got a little too ahead of myself. That's the Washington Wizards. I really am a fan of these moves they've been making this offseason. I really am. I like the CJ McCollum ad. Obviously, they got Chris Middleton at the deadline. I really like that move. I like a lot of these. I like giving up Jordan Poole. Okay? I like a lot of these guys that they're getting. My question for them is, can we keep trending up? This is probably the first time that I can ask that question to the Wizards since John Wall, it feels like. Can we keep trending up? I'm a huge fan of all this stuff, and I think for the first time, we're seeing actual real NBA, somewhat competent moves this offseason from a team that hasn't shown that for a very long time. I don't think they're poised for a play-in run necessarily. I think we may see some moves this year from the Wizards, and I think they're probably still shooting for that lottery. But I think if this roster stays as is with a solid coach, they absolutely could be. Who's to say they couldn't be a 10 seed? Who's to say they couldn't be a 10 seed? Me. I don't think so. I think I would take the Raptors over the Wizards, and that's kind of my bar right there. But can we keep trending up? I like these moves. Let's keep going in the right direction. You got a lot of young players over there. I like Sarr too. I like Kispert over there too. Let's keep making these moves. Let's keep trending up for Washington. All right. I said my second favorite team in the Eastern Conference to watch is the Detroit Pistons. Number one is the Orlando Magic. So let's talk about them. And I've foreshadowed this a little bit throughout the offseason, but my biggest question for the Orlando Magic is, can Franz make a case to stay this year? Okay, you got a big three of Franz, Bane, and Suggs, and obviously Paolo, right? I'm looking up right now because I want to see what Franz Wagner was shooting from three last year. Let's pull that up real quick. Played 33 minutes a game, 60 games played. Okay, Franz Wagner shot less than 30% from three on the regular season, less than 20 from three in the playoffs in 5 games. In 5 games. He needs to be able to shoot if this team is going to work. Because you can't have a guy like Paolo who is getting down to the post, mid-range guy, right? Likes to live in the post, ISO kind of guy, and can't shoot. I'm trying to pull up his splits here too because I want to see how many attempts he put up here. All right, so 352 attempts on the year, and he made 104. Yikes. That's just not good. It's just not good. It's just not good enough for Franz Wagner. And this is why I say he needs to make the case to stay. What if I told you he's the highest paid player on that team right now? Would you believe me? Because he is. He's making $38 million next year. Bane's making $36 million. Suggs is making $35 million. Paolo's making $15 million. His extension kicks in next year. He'll start making $47 million. That's why he's not the highest paid player right now. That's a lot of money to pay for a guy that can't even shoot 20%. You're talking 20% is 1 of 5 from 3. You're talking about a guy that can't even give you that for 5 games. 5 games. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. And I don't want to talk too down on him because he's super young and he does a lot of things with the ball that are really good, right? He has a kind of vision for a small forward that you don't see a whole lot. He's got a little bit of a handle here. But for this team, right? I'm not talking about Franz as a player. Franz as a player may be fine without the 3 ball. Franz as an Orlando Magic, to try and get to the ceiling that this team can be at, has to be able to shoot threes. And he needs to make a case this year to stay on this team. If not, you brought in Bane. You're slowly going all in on Paolo. You gotta figure out Franz. You gotta figure out Franz. There's a lot of things that $38 million can do for you on an NBA roster instead of somebody that's shooting less than 20% from 3 for a playoff. Less than 30% from 3 for a season. And he started hot too. You've seen flashes. Flashes aren't enough. Flashes are only flashes. They are not indicative of who you are as a player. They may be indicative of who you can be, but who you can be is not who you are. And who Franz is shooting less than 30% from 3. Let's go to the Miami Heat. I'm going to save an exciting team for last year because the Heat are not on that list for me. My question for them is, who is your next star? This is a team that got Andrew Wiggins back, and Kyle Anderson, I think, was thrown in on that trade too for Jimmy Butler in the Warriors deal. The Heat culture, right? We've heard that cliche probably a million billion times over the last 4 or 5 years since Butler's been taking them to crazy finals runs. The Heat have thrived on the fact of, well, A, that culture. There's some kind of, I don't know if it's superstition is the right word, kind of just glow that comes off of this phrase, Heat culture, where for some reason players are so attracted to it because it seems like they do things the right way. I think that was probably a little bit of a bad light was shined on that this year with the Jimmy deal, but that just kind of seems to be the case wherever he goes. My question for the Heat is, who is your next star? This is a team that has thrived on being mediocre, hanging right around in on that play-in spot, hanging right around that 500 mark, and waiting for Miami to do the dirty work for them, the city of Miami to do the dirty work for them, to where a big star wants to come to Miami. This is not a team that's set up to compete. I don't think I don't think the Heat believe that they're set up to compete this year. I think you saw a promising lead with Hero last year. I thought he had his best season of his career so far. You hope he builds off that. You hope Bam can kind of figure out his offense, because last year there was a lot of, especially it started in USA ball when they were playing in the Olympics. They wanted him to take more threes. And then he started taking more threes, and they wanted him to stop taking threes. And for some reason, Bam has this weird hitch where, this weird habit where he could be 3 feet from the basket and he wants to go, fade hook or fade, jumper instead of being 6'9", 6'10" like he is and just bullying somebody and playing like the big man that he can be. I want to see that fixed. I want to see Hero keep doing his leap, and I want to see what you can do with the Andrew Wiggins stuff because I don't think he's probably the guy that's going to be sticking around for that long. Let's end things here with a team that, in my opinion, had the most promising offseason out of all, the Houston Rockets, had the most promising offseason out of all 15 Eastern Conference teams. That is the Atlanta Hawks. My question for the Hawks is this roster finally enough to get them out of play-in purgatory, where they have sat, patiently waiting since their 2021 Eastern Conference Finals run? You've gone through the DeJounte Murray trade. You've gone through trying to mix and match pieces around Trae Young. And now their roster sounds like this. Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, Onyeka Okongwu, Luke Kennard, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Zachary Richardson, the number 1 overall pick. That sounds like a promising core right there. That sounds like a team that's built to be around an offensive hub, small guard that can shoot the heck out of the basketball in Trae Young. Dyson Daniels, elite defender. Jalen Johnson, elite defender. All-star this year? Dyson Daniels was up for DPOY last year. Kristaps can be a rim protector. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, really good defender. Zachary Richardson showed some flashes. We just talked about what flashes mean, but it's his first year in the league. It's his first year playing basketball in the U.S., coming over from France, right? Time you get adjusted. They play a little bit different. Euro ball plays a little bit different than we do over here. Luke Kennard, another shooter out there. I won't put him under the defender category, but somebody that can shoot threes and at least take some of the offensive pressure off Trae Young as far as a defender. You're not going to sag off of him to help on a Trae Young drive where he gets to that float game. I'm high on this team. I want to see this team sneak into the top 6. Get out of the play-in. Get out of the play-in. Have a real chance at a first-round series. Don't have to fight your way into the playoffs. Don't have to get to a Game 7. Okay, that's the wrap here. That's all my questions for the Eastern Conference teams. We've talked about the ranking stuff. Next week we're gonna go position by position. I haven't decided where I'm gonna start yet. If you have a preference, let me know in the comments. We're gonna do a little bit of a recap on some of these signings and whatnot, right? Damian Lillard going back to Portland, Chris Paul, Beal going to LA. Some things that we've just missed while we're going through these biggest questions. Now, obviously, those guys would have popped up if we were doing the Western Conference today, but we're not. We're doing the Eastern Conference. We can only talk about the moves in the Eastern Conference. Next week, we're going to do a little bit of a recap, cleaning up some of the stuff that we missed, and we're going to get into some of our player rankings. Give us a follow on all our socials here. I got them listed right here down below. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that bell so you know exactly when we're uploading new content. I know I've been saying it last week. I'm trying to grind these shorts. I know that they haven't necessarily been coming out in the force that I'm describing, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Be patient with me. We're getting there. I appreciate all the support so far, guys. It has meant the world. Game 7. Best 2 words in sports. Thanks for watching.